There is no bigger story right now than what is happening to our country. So that is why I'm here and just reporting on every bit of excitement and every twist and turn. It's already been an incredible morning of drama. I woke up to a text message from a cabinet minister, one of those who's still in post, saying Boris Johnson has gone mad, and expressing his agony over whether it was the right thing to do, this cabinet minister, to leave his own post, because then there would be, across the government, if everybody does that, a completely rudderless situation. Now, Boris has resigned officially, and the position as of now is that he's going to stay on until the autumn. I'm not at all sure that that position is going to hold until the end of today. There's already an outcry amongst his own MPs as to how on earth is this possibly going to work, and setting aside what opposition parties are saying, because we can put that down to self-interest. What is going to happen in terms of actually performing the day-to-day duties of the government? We've got 50 unfilled posts. Many of them are very junior, but some of them are pretty senior. Are those ministers who resigned yesterday and the day before now just going to go back to their jobs? If they're not going to go back to their jobs, then how does this sustain for a period of potentially 3 months? So I think this story is moving very, very rapidly. And the idea that we're going to kind of go through months of turmoil may not sustain.
Yes. Well, I was saying last night on the talk, which we were both on last night after 10 o'clock, that, you know, we'd either have a summer of Boris Johnson avoiding questions from his own people, asking him why he hasn't resigned yet, or we would have a summer of uncertainty while the Tory party works out who the next leader's going to be. And it seems to me, as you say, it's going to be very difficult, I would have thought, for anyone to work for a effectively lame duck Prime Minister who can't make policy, who can't really carry out any policy, and who can't really make any appointments of anyone, particularly those who have already left his side.
And a narrative is soon going to develop that this is actually a dangerous situation in terms of international security and the really big decisions that need to be taken about, you know, keeping us all safe in pretty uncertain times. So I think that events could move very rapidly. There's a lot of talk about whether there could be some kind of caretaker prime minister. Now, the difficulty there are multiple difficulties. One, that nobody ever really wants to rule themselves out of a leadership election. Who would you put in that position? We'll put it another way. A lot of talk about Dominic Raab. He stepped up when the Prime Minister was in hospital with COVID. It's a job he's done before, and he did it very steadily. You know, he was very clever then about the way he positioned himself, making it quite clear that he wasn't the Prime Minister. He was just a stand-in. He was very collegiate. So I think there could be some consensus around him as a figure to do that job. But would he want to do it? I don't know. A much wilder speculation, you know, someone like Theresa May should do it because she's clearly not going to come back permanently. I mean, this is for the birds.
Yeah.
I can't see that happening. But I think that, you know, some sort of older statesman figure, that's possible.
Yeah, we know, for example, that the Tory party in general and the grandees do not certainly want an election. But is there a possibility that Boris could suddenly kind of, as his final throw of the dice, say, OK, well, I'm going to resign, but I want to have an election as well at some point in the summer?
I don't think so. I saw this kind of notion gathering pace yesterday, and the reality is that Conservative MPs are terrified of that because very many of them would now lose their seats. They need the next 2 years to consolidate, to stabilise under a new leader. So the party is vehemently against it. I think Boris Johnson this morning will be a broken man. He is not in a position to call a general election. I mean, what phenomenal drama that would be, but I would bet my house that isn't going to be the way this plays out.
And isn't it interesting, though, that, you know, there'll be an awful lot of people as well, you know, gloating this morning, people dancing on the grave of Boris Johnson. We saw that cartoon in the Times last night of him sort of, you know, trying to sort of get out from under the lid of the coffin and trying to see if he could keep the wallpaper. You know, he's got a lot of enemies in the media. He's got a lot of enemies in all areas of politics. However, that won't stop, I don't think, if he still remains in place as a sort of caretaker Prime Minister, because that whole movement will see themselves as having been victorious today. But a lot of Tory voters already saying, be careful what you wish for, because, you know, you could get the worst of all possible worlds with a Labour government in a couple of years' time. You could get the wrong sort of Tory in charge taking over from Boris Johnson. And what a lot of people are saying is they want a proper Conservative, somebody who does the things that Conservative voters want.
So you make a really good point there about Boris Johnson's legacy, and many of our viewers and our listeners will be genuinely grateful, and rightly so, that the outgoing Prime Minister did deliver Brexit. You know, none of us have forgotten the agonies of actually getting that through Parliament, of actually working on the will of the people and seeing it through. That wasn't easy. It took a great deal of courage. He faced everybody down and he did it. And a lot of our listeners will want to give him due credit for that. And I think the tragedy is that the longer that Boris Johnson remains, even over the summer, the messier it gets over the summer, the more that legacy will be tarnished with the manner of his departure.
Yes. I mean, I think we can all agree that he had to do what he did this morning, and it's good that he's done it. No question at all. But I remember those days back in 2019, endlessly sitting on College Green in that tent of common sense, sometimes known as the tent of shame, where there was literally a stalemate. And I mean, I remember the Saturday where everybody sat, the Parliament sat for the first time on a Saturday, and again, we sat there for hours and nothing happened. Oliver Letwin sort of managed to kibosh anything that was going on, and it was an extraordinary time. And when you think back to it now, you know, we are in a much different place.
It was utterly extraordinary. I mean, we at talkTV ran a number of special programmes yesterday, didn't we, where we were sitting there for a couple of hours and colleagues were manfully providing ongoing commentary. I mean, again, the last time I remember doing that was in exactly that period that you described there, of the turmoil within the House of Commons as MPs went to vote on Brexit, and, you know, various complicated legal ruses were used to try to thwart Brexit from happening. And sometimes there were 3 hours blocks of television when this was going on and we were still getting nowhere. And Boris Johnson did prove to be the way out from that. But there are enormous questions now about the direction in which this country goes forward. And without a doubt, the Brexit narrative will come back. I mean, one of the leadership contenders is certain to be Jeremy Hunt. He's very much on the Remain side. It's unbelievable that we're still even having this conversation. Personally, I don't think he'll get anywhere in that contest, because hardly anyone except a few diehards really thinks that we can go back into the EU or even the single market. But that narrative will return and could be very, very messy. And by the way, very bad for our international reputation. I mean, until a week ago, this was a sort of minor, rather ridiculous domestic crisis, and abroad people may not really have been taking too much notice of it. You know, oh, those Brits, they're also very upstanding. They get incredibly worked up over minor issues, which in other countries would be, in other regimes, more corrupt regimes, would perhaps not be considered such a big deal. But now everybody is watching this ridiculous, crazy psychodrama, and our reputation abroad is at stake. And we've got to be really careful how politics conducts itself over the next few months.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Isabel, great to talk to you. Thank you very much.